speak in public before. I have a script today, so that we don't. Yeah. I am Brooke. Good afternoon. Welcome. Thanks for being here.
And I am Kevin. I know walking into a room like this can be a little, what is the word? Uncomfortable, maybe intimidating, but we're all here because we're supposed to be here. So welcome all of you and thank you for being here.
I think we all ended up here because of a data center, but for different reasons, right? For example, who got mad one day last summer and now you're here? Same.
Who's here because somebody else got mad and they convinced you to be mad too? Yeah, we're all in this together.
How many didn't even know what a data center was in June? Same. Anyone still not sure? That's good. All right.
Okay, how many of you went to your first city council meeting since this all started? Yup.
Raise your hand if you made it made you question ever leaving home again.
Okay, who now has really strong opinions about closed loop cooling? Yeah.
Environmental impact studies. Yeah.
TIDS.
Best pizza in town.
No, not pizza. Not Ted's. TIDS. That was in the script.
I have to understand something to have a strong opinion.
Really? That doesn't stop most people.
That's true.
Okay, let's do this. In a second, I want you to find a person, you don't know them, and I want you to ask them 2 questions.
Like this. Kevin, how did you find out about the data center?
I mean, it has to be Facebook, but I don't remember exactly. I think that's probably true about you. How about you? How did you find out about the data center?
Oh, I wasn't going to go here, but I'm going here. I live over in that area, and I had just, the word on the street about data centers impacting people's livelihoods had just kind of started circulating the internet, and I am chronically online. So I saw it, and I was driving home on County D one day, and I was like, dang, this looks like a really good spot for a data center. And I think within the next week, it came out that there was one going to be there. So I guess that's how I found out. Cool. What's one thing you're hoping to understand better by the time we're done here today?
I think understanding TIDS a little bit better
You will.
would be useful, because
What
that's
is
really
TIDS?
complicated to me.
What is TIDS?
We're gonna
You
find
know
out
what?
today, I think.
We're going to cover that.
Yeah.
So let's wait till that's an important question.
Okay, I just wondered.
Me too.
And how did you, or no, the understanding thing. What's one thing you were hoping to understand better today?
For me, just like how to keep one out of our space, really, and what we can do to prevent that. Cool. If you came here thinking I just came to observe or I'm not really a talker, that's totally fine. You can just listen.
And you can learn a lot by eavesdropping. Anyway, you've got 60 seconds to meet somebody around you and ask them those 2 questions. Ready? Go.
We can agree on this. We don't want this thing crazy. That's how I work.
Okay, yeah, so hopefully that was pretty painless. The rest of the day should be pretty painless too. Painless, but productive.
And remember, everyone should participate at the level that works for them. No pressure. Engage how you want to engage. Are we good?
Yeah, great. Now, we've got some housekeeping info, and I think you're doing that, right?
Yeah, I'm gonna just do some housekeeping stuff. First, restrooms are right behind you. You don't even have to leave the room to get there. Next, feel free to keep your phones on, but let's set them to silent. If you need to make a phone call, please step out of the room. There are little slips of paper, there's little notebooks and slips of paper. You can use them to write things down. You can also write questions down you have, but you'd rather not ask them yourselves. We'll come around and find you if you have something you want to be asked during the Q&A parts of the day. Yeah, so if you have something on the slip you want someone else to read, just hold it up and we'll come find you. We have a limited number of writing utensils. If you have an extra, loan to a neighbor, that's also helpful. Phones are good for note taking as well. Feel free to move around as you need to, when you need to. You're welcome to bring beverages in from next door. Just do what you can to limit distraction from others. And please be mindful of the camera. We are doing a live stream with Dunn County right over in that direction. Oh, everybody wave at the camera. Say hi. Yay! Awesome. Okay. Live stream people, feel free to type in questions. We may not get to all of them, but we are going to, Blaine says he'll try to do his best to get them answered even after we're done today and post a Q&A on the Facebook group. And with that, I think we have a short video and we'll get the day started. Thank you. Oh. Okay.
Yeah, we had, whoops,
Oops, sorry.
just had some, hello.
The one on the dais just turned on.
Oh, the one on the dais is turned on. Yeah, we had some technical problems with audio for the video, so we didn't be able to do that, but welcome. Thank you for being here. It's kind of scary to put something together in 2 weeks and just not know if anyone's going to show up, so it's very encouraging to see your faces. And I'm very excited about this day and what we're going to be accomplishing together. I'm Blaine Halverson. And how I found out about this was my wife and I were on vacation in Colorado in July. And she was just sitting in the car next to me and she goes, hey, you know, they're like putting in she called it a server farm. They're putting in a server farm on County B. I said, what are you talking about? I didn't know what that was. And then the word data center came up and all I could think of, like I thought of some pretty cool scenes from Mission Impossible. That's what I thought about. And it's really didn't get my attention too much because I didn't know much about it, but then she started reading things and reading them out loud to me. So that whole thing, who here, someone else got mad and then convinced them to be mad, that's kind of my story. And that's why I'm here. And the anger has since dissipated in a lot of ways, but it's turning into action. And that's kind of what this day is about, right? Anger, when something happens like that in a community, anger is a natural reaction. And kind of that group anger is a powerful thing that can get action going, but it's also kind of like that power boost in a video game that moves you for about 5 seconds and then it's gone, right? At some point it has to turn into something different. And that's what we're hoping to do today, is make this a real, a day of feeling of, well, let's put it this way. Who here is feeling anxious about this coming here? Yeah. Who's feeling nervous about it? Right? Who is feeling a little excited at the same time? Not many of you, okay. Yeah, all that's normal. Remember, I think back to the meetings. If you think back, there's almost a 6-month period of time where almost any public meeting any of us went to, it was frustrating, it was disappointing, it made us feel powerless. weak, like we had no say. And that is something that carries, right? And it kind of keeps that echo. So I'm sure that's carrying over as you're walking in here today. Who was at that annexation meeting? Anybody was at that annexation meeting? Yeah. How did you recover? I just watched that on video and I could see the frustration. I could feel it through the videos, through the screen, and the frustration on everyone's side, just the tension that was in the room. And we're through that. That's in the past now. And now it's, well, what do we do next? So I think that knowing that you're anxious going in makes you brave for showing up. And I also would say that, we've got city council members here, right? That are brave for showing up because they went through some stuff because of this, right? And the thing that I would say is they showed up here in spite of that because they want to hear you. They want to listen. And if they didn't care about listening, they wouldn't be here, right? So keep that in mind. I look at today as a kind of a turning point. Those feelings of the past, even the decision this week that caused some of us frustration, it's in the past. It's something we had no control over as far as the way we're getting our input in. What we do control is what happens in this room right now, together. Okay, that's what we have control over. You have elected officials, like I said, who chose up to be here to listen. You have candidates who chose up to be here and listen. People who don't want to do things right don't show up. It doesn't mean that everyone who doesn't show up doesn't care. It just means that the people who are here obviously do. So let's think about those words and that you talked about before. We talked about anxiety, we talked about nervousness, and let's think of some of the opposite, right? Feeling relaxed, feeling empowered, right? Feeling collaborative, feeling hopeful. That's the thing that we want to come out of this day. The one thing you have in this room is that the people who are here with you are on your team. We're on the same side. And that is enough. Like, none of us see the data center situation the exact same way, and that's okay. What matters is we can find common ground in this group of people. Okay? That's what matters. So now, look at someone next to you and say, hey, you're my teammate. Now look at someone else and say, you got this. Now, I just want you to know you're in a safe place. We don't need to be stressed out. We don't need to be fearful about this day. We can relax, we can learn, we can contribute, and collaborate, and be energized and empowered instead of drained and defeated. Is that okay with everyone?
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, we're going to get started here. Isaac's going to come up. I want to introduce Isaac Wold. Everyone give Isaac a hand.
Hi guys, I'm Isaac.
Isaac is going to he's going to moderate our panel today. Isaac's a really sharp young man who's been studying this very thoroughly and has had many interesting conversations with me lately about some of the things he's discovering and learning about. He and I have become ordnance geeks, right? Like all
I
the
wouldn't
different.
wish it on anyone.
No, it's an odd malady. Anyway, so but Isaac's going to do that. But first, we want to go through some ground rules with you today.
Absolutely. And I don't really like the term rules at all. So maybe does anyone have any ideas on like a better term we could use? Maybe anyone?
What's a better rule? What's a better word than rules? Hold it up to your mic. Mouth. Structure.
Guideline.
Guidelines. You like guidelines? All right, let's do guidelines. All right, guidelines. So, guideline number 1, Isaac. Go ahead and read it to us.
What do you think?
Right here.
One speaks, everyone else listens. Orderly.
Yeah, we're just trying to make sure that we're all toned in on who's talking. We're going to give people a chance to talk. We want to make sure we hear them and learn from each other. Let's go to number 2.
So we're gonna be cool also. This is some good civil discourse, but not civil war, all right?
The point is-
We do not need civil war.
Yeah, the point is personal confrontation is not a thing today. That's not what we're doing today. All right, next.
So our third is going to be staying on the train. You know, every track, you like to go forward for the most part when you're going somewhere. Going backwards usually doesn't get you where you need to be. Usually something's gone wrong or kind of getting sidetracked. So we want to just go forward today.
This is just a trust process. We've put together a plan to take you through some things, and all you got to do is stay on the train. And we'll all end up in the same place together. Next.
All eyes forwards, because again, fast trains just go forward.
Yeah, we're not relitigating the past today. That's not a thing today. Today is about what we can do to protect ourselves and to help our neighborhood. And when I say neighborhood now, I mean Hudson to Black River Falls to Rice Lake to La Crosse. That's our neighborhood now when you're talking about these kind of developments. Okay?
Rule number 5 is a free country. So let every citizen the way they want a citizen. Okay?
Yeah, and that's intentional. Let everybody citizen the way they want a citizen, okay? Yeah, all that's saying is it's up to you how you engage today. You can engage by staying quiet, you can engage by really getting into it, getting up here and speaking. You can engage by turning in your slip to someone else to read for you, right? You just get to choose, and there's not going to be any pressure, and we're not going to, we're not going to involve any pressure in that. Any questions about that? All right, well, we're going to get started with the panel. We're going to welcome up Sarah Zarling and Prescott Bouch. We had Quinn Netsky, who was going to be here, and she ended up with pneumonia the day before yesterday, so she wasn't able. I tried to find someone else to come with her, but that didn't work out. So you just got a few of us. All right, thanks. We're going to get started.
All right, can you all hear me? Perfect. So I want to just get you on a panel for a second so everyone just kind of knows who's talking and kind of their background. So first of all, we'll just go introduce everybody, tell us who you are, how you got pulled into this effort, and what's inspiring you to keep continuing and being so active in it.
The answer to the last part is because I'm crazy. I just wanted to joke and let you turn it on.
So I'll skip the joke. Sorry, it was great, though. You missed it. My name is Prescott Balch. I live in Caledonia, which, in case you didn't know, is one of the early communities that managed to resist a data center proposal, which was being made in a terrible parcel, perfect for the developer, not so perfect for the people that live nearby. Since being successful pushing back on them, I've been running around the upper Midwest trying to help as many communities as possible, not necessarily to resist, but to understand the pros and the cons. The developers will tell you all the pros. I'm a technology professional by trade, retired now, but I spent 40 years in the technology business, so I know a lot about the industry and a lot about data centers. And I have a unique perspective on what they can do to particularly small communities. And so I'm here as a way to help everyone understand both those pros and cons so they can make informed decisions.
Hello. Thank you everyone for being here. I appreciate you taking time out of this beautiful Sunday afternoon to support Blaine and everyone in this very important issue. So my name is Sarah Zarling. I have ventured here from Watertown. I'm very honored that Blaine asked me to be here so I can try and help with my perspective. I guess basically why I'm here is, in a nutshell, 11 years ago, I love that you've used the train stuff because I'm actually a rail safety expert. Like that's my primary area of expertise. So 11 years ago, I saw an oil train go by where I used to live, and something in it, just something about it just struck me as curious. And so I looked it up and I saw that one had derailed in this little town in Canada and incinerated 47 people in part of their town. And I was like, whoa, I don't want that going by my house. And so that was the beginning for me, and I became what I think Blaine and Brooke and Isaac and even maybe Prescott and some of the others who have been active in this issue as well. There's a term called accidental activist. So that's what I became, and I dove into, like basically that's when I started falling down the rabbit hole, and so I became a social and environmental justice advocate, and essentially the essence of my work that I do, after I learned about oil trains, I learned about the cradle to the grave of fossil fuel extraction, production, and transport, and then into petrochemicals after the train derailment in East Palestine. And so data centers are just like my latest endeavor. And essentially what I've done is I've gone to areas where bad things have happened, like bad train derailments or where people are living with pollution, and I interview people and get their stories and share their stories and document the horrible thing that happened or what they're living with photos and videos. And holding industry accountable essentially is like the essence of the work that I do, because I take very huge issue with industry literally bulldozing over people or poisoning people for their own profit and personal gain. So the data center issue is certainly under that umbrella, and so that's kind of why I'm here.
Yeah, I already kind of told you how I got here, and you've kind of lived that with me a little bit. I will say though that I had been really pretty active community person for many, many years, and then for like the last 10 years, I kind of pulled back from a lot of that. Just the nature of it was kind of exhausting at times, and so primarily now my work is working in the mental health field, and I kind of work all over the western part of the state, and most of the time I'm not even in Menominee. Which has been a good thing for me. It took a lot for me to decide that I wanted to not only just come out and do something with this, but to like take any kind of part of it by the horns, right? It took a little bit for my wife to convince me that it mattered, but when she did, then I started caring about it even more than she did in some ways. Not that she didn't care about it, but you know what I'm saying. I took it on a little bit differently. So, and it's become something important to me, and Prescott's talking about that, the small town thing. This is the part that has got me really engaged now, is even beyond our hometown. Because we've done what we can do to some degree, we're doing what we can going forward. But what I think about are the towns that I'm seeing who are being exploited immediately, like badly. Like I'm talking about like small towns, villages with budgets of $700,000 who are being asked to take on a $10 billion project that if it doesn't work out, they'll never recover, right? Those kinds of things. And so I spent a lot of my time thinking about what kind of protections can we help these communities put in place proactively that give them more control over their future rather than just getting bulldozed. So we're going to talk some about that later in the day. So.
Awesome. So as far as me, I kind of heard some similarities and differences. I honestly couldn't even tell you how I got started with this. It was probably just a Facebook post or something, and likely I was searching for the truth. That's usually what leads me down a rabbit hole, is that I just want to figure out the truth. And so I ended up putting out a really long request, just requesting all of the documents pertaining to this data center. And I'm still waiting, but in that process of waiting, I've just kept digging and digging and digging, because you can still figure out, based on action, legislation, all these different factors, all the way up to the federal government and their incentives. You can kind of figure out what's going on. So that's just kind of my journey in this. So is there anything that you guys initially thought was like a really big concern, but as you guys have gone research more and more, you realize that, no, this is actually of bigger importance than what I initially came in on.
I guess.
The thing that has surprised me the most is the construction impact. My big theme, if you've seen any of the stuff that I've done online, is the financial risks and the technology risks and so on. And I still believe in my heart that those are huge. But if you want to know what surprised me the most, it's the scale of the construction. So if you have somebody build a house next door to you, it's annoying for a few months. And then nice neighbors move in and you have a barbecue and everything's great. But data centers are reasonably benign in terms of like big, huge buildings next door. After they're constructed, there are still some problems, but they're mild compared to the construction burden. The campuses of data centers that are being built have construction schedules that are 10 years long. They build them consecutively to manage their risk of technology change, which is another function of the industry that I know really well from living in it. And the scale of the construction is best described as heavy industrial, which is not the ultimate end use of the facility. The ultimate end use of the facility is considered light industrial. Quiet, not a lot of people, nice trees around the property, etc. But the construction is in no uncertain terms heavy industrial. We drove down to Mount Pleasant to talk to people that live nearby and said, how was living nearby this heavy industrial construction site? And they said, I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. And some of them said, I give up. We lived through building one. We can't possibly tolerate another one. 4 months of pile driving, debris, dust everywhere, all day, every day. Minimum 10 hours a day, 7 days a week. Construction schedules in Port Washington, it's 24/7. Unless you've seen it in person, you just can't appreciate how massive that is and how much impact there is. And what is catching most communities off guard is zoning regulations are much more about end use of the property and not about the construction of getting there. There are certainly regulations in every community about what kind of nuisance you can create in a construction site, but they're all done with the belief that it's a reasonably finite period of time. So if you live anywhere nearby, who the heck's going to buy your house at market rate if there's 8 more years left of heavy industrial construction? And it's a huge issue, and nobody's zoning regulations are taking it into consideration, and nobody's developer agreements with the data center companies are taking it into account, and people that live nearby are getting harmed badly.
So for me, this issue, the data center issue, it's just like every other issue that I've encountered on my journey down the rabbit hole. So everything that I discovered, like when I discovered what the oil trains were, and then I started learning about fracking and pipelines and all that stuff, like, you know, you dive into the research until your brain and your eyes hurt and your heart hurts because you're learning just all this very intensive stuff very quickly. And so for me, I'm still learning in this issue, but I have learned so much. I came into it naturally because it's already under the scope of the work that I do. So once I started learning about the increased number of data center proposals in the state and the environmental impacts that data centers have on the environment, particularly around it, that's why I wanted to get involved in the first place, because it just naturally fell under the scope of work that I do. And the Beaver Dam is the first community that I've been, you know, really on the ground working in, because it's in close proximity to where I live. I live in Watertown, so Beaver Dam's only 30 minutes from me. And so the first day that I met with a young woman who had already been doing some behind the scenes organizing work there, after I left her, I drove around the construction site and saw firsthand, for the first time, everything Prescott said is true. And on my YouTube channel, I've been posting like every month or two, I'll drive out to the site and do a perimeter and post like update videos of the progress of the construction. And I've started finally getting to Port Washington as well. And I don't know if you've been following along with what's been going on there, but most recently, a business across the street from the construction, they're being impacted greatly. Like so much to where it's affecting their business because there's so much dust everywhere and they can't keep up with it. And someone else has been reporting that they're getting sick because even the dust gets in their house and their kids are getting sick. And so I'm really glad we're talking about this because the environmental impacts are the thing I think that's like the most talked about with data centers, and it's certainly extremely important. But I think that the thing that gets overlooked the most is the impact that the construction has to the people who live closest to the site, because it really truly is a serious, it's complete upheaval to people's lives. In Beaver Dam, residents very early on were already reporting of damage to their you know, when people feel like they have to move, a lot of times, because these are happening in the country, in farm fields and things, like a lot of you probably know, you know, you buy a house in the country because that's where you want to die, right? That's where you want to live the rest of your life. And then you have, you know, some utility company or someone knocking on your door wanting to buy your property, or now you're forced to live with this construction and it totally just destroys your life. And so the stress alone and, you know, the property damage and, you know, the loss of sleep from the noise and the light pollution and just so many things. Like, so, you know, these projects are very, very serious, and not just the environment, but residents who live near the construction really need to be a top consideration when communities are considering these projects.
Yeah, I was going to say construction too, because I come to the conclusion that saying no, that the construction is enough to say no, right? You're talking about something that will fundamentally, especially for a small town, it will fundamentally change the nature of that town, like forever. Just the construction period. You're talking about children whose entire childhood will be defined by the construction happening near their home. Especially ones who live, you know, within a half mile or a mile. There's a lot up here that would live in that. It's gonna affect whether they can go out and play. Like if you saw the news story the other day about in Port Washington, it's an auto repair business, and they're having to wash the cars that they are, washing the cars that they're servicing that are there every 2 days, right? They're getting dust inside, they're getting dust inside the building, and they're losing business because of it. And there's not a whole lot that can be done because it wasn't something that anyone anticipated. So yeah, I think the construction and from an ordinance standpoint, having some strict rules and guidelines. I saw a video of a guy from Port Washington the other day. I went outside at 5 o'clock in the morning, living a half mile away, aimed it at the construction site, light everywhere, and pile driving, just noise. And his house was rattling at 5 o'clock in the morning. He called the town chairman, and the town chairman said, "Why are you calling me so early?" I think he was thinking, well, if I can't sleep, you're not going to either. But the other thing that, like I said, but small towns, the smaller towns, and what that really is about, it makes me angry. The coming into a small village and saying, we're going to give you $88 million in your taxes, and they're just guessing. And the person who's coming in saying that isn't even work for the data center company. They're a consultant who's coming in and trying to get the project moving, right? They don't represent the actual, they represent, but their job is to just get this project moving down the road. And they're just pulling out a number, basically. And you get that little town with $88 million a year. But no one stops to think, what happens when the $88 million a year tax company decides, man, we're not gonna pay that much anymore. And it's 70% of your budget. And all they have to do is say, we'll leave. Someone else will give us a better deal. And that happens. It happens all the time. And that's one of the things people don't realize is the financial risk. I've been working with trying to talk to legislators here about that there need to be different rules for some of these smaller companies or towns when they have to face these kind of developments. They should have some protections in place that prevent them from kind of being maneuvered and pushed into a corner.
Just very, very quickly, I want to support what Blaine just said because he's 100% right. And I just want to, I guess, add or put a finer point to it that, you know, these people who are coming in to try and convince your city officials that this is a good idea, their paycheck literally depends on it. We really need to think of it from that standpoint. The numbers that they are projecting, yes, they're gonna definitely always, they're gonna aim high, they're gonna shoot for the stars because they wanna do whatever they can to dangle these carrots, these financial carrots, in the noses of particularly these smaller communities who need the money. And because their paycheck depends on getting this project the green light, you know, I don't have to explain it anymore. You definitely understand.
And I'd say for me, the one thing that I'm right where Blaine is, right where everyone else is, in the fact that I think that the scale of such a big project sounds attractive. And you think about, oh, it's going to increase our tax base and we can do more stuff. But the more that I looked into it, I started to realize that in our 2026 budget here for Menominee, about 21% of that comes from state aid. So if we bring in such a rich data center, now our community looks rich on paper, and then we lose that aid, that's 20%. What discussions have been in place about how we're gonna adjust for that? And there's so many different state incentives, there's so many different parts and processes that it's kind of led me into the risks for the city fiscally, which is really weird because, you know, it's a giant data center, you think you're gonna get a bunch of money for it, but I think it actually puts a lot more risk on the community, especially if they decommission early or the boom stops. I mean, we saw that in North Dakota in some towns. We saw that by the 80s out in New Mexico with the uranium boom, and we've seen it in a couple other industries, and towns just got decimated and left behind. And for Menominee, this is the hub for Dunn County. I lived in Boyceville growing up, and you have to come here to do stuff. So it doesn't just affect Menominee, it affects Spring Valley, it was even St. Croix County. It affects all the small communities around us. So we'll move on to the next panel discussion, and I want to point this one for you, Prescott, because I think this is kind of your wheelhouse. So we just want to kind of discuss how we even got here as a country. Obviously, the development of AI plays a huge role, but data centers have obviously been around for a very long time. So what's really changed?
Yeah, data centers have been around for 50 plus years. They used to be the basement of a building that your company was in, and then they became separate buildings, and then they became monster cloud computing facilities, and then monster wasn't big enough, so we call them hyperscale. Hyperscale just means big, and it's all driven by artificial intelligence, and there's a irrational exuberance to artificial intelligence going on right now that, while I call it irrational, is actually quite rational action. So artificial intelligence as a computing event is very expensive. It takes a lot of computing power. Whereas something like a Google search, just a regular old-fashioned run-of-the-mill Google search, is really, really tiny in terms of cost. An artificial intelligence-powered search or artificial intelligence-powered application becomes really, really expensive. And everybody is enamored by the possibilities for artificial intelligence, which, in fairness, look phenomenal. We think it's easy to think of all the great things we can do. It's a lot harder to actually implement it. But if you take a really expensive operation and you really believe it's got to be in every single product, every single business, everything, you get a lot times a lot equals a crap ton. And that's what we're currently proposing in terms of new data centers. Like, the worst thing in the world for a technology professional, by the way, is to run out of computing power. if you have too many customers show up all at the same time, you don't have enough computers to serve them, you're in a big fat lot of trouble. The industry is currently reacting to really expensive times everything equals a lot, and they are just headlong rushing into building as many data centers as they can in order to prevent themselves from running out of computing capacity. So that sounds rational, right? The part that most people don't see because they're not in the industry is that's going to change. Somebody's going to say, one, we're not making enough money on it, so we can't put it in everything because it's too expensive. Or some kid currently in his parents' basement is coding his brains out trying to figure out a way to make artificial intelligence less expensive. And now all of a sudden you have cheap times a lot equals a reasonable amount, and maybe we don't need so many data centers. Nobody can plan, though, for those changes to happen. They can only plan based on what they know now, and what they know now is, I need $3 trillion worth of data centers in order to support what is projected as industry demand. That's as simple as it is. I need a lot of gas in the car because I'm going to be driving really fast, really far. It's as simple as that.
So first of all, I'm just going to say the one thing that maybe a lot of us are thinking and not saying: data, potato, potato. All right. But yeah, so we were at the Capitol, all of us, the other day, and the thought occurred to me when I was speaking at a press conference that I really feel like this whole AI data center issue is particularly with, the explosion of all the proposals and whatnot, I feel like it is a grand display of kind of some of the worst of human nature, and that we've got to have the next big shiny thing, and we've got to have it now. And so that's why I feel like it's really important with what we're all going to learn here today, with how important it is that we just take a step back. And communities need to all collectively take a step back, and let's learn more about these hyperscale AI data centers. Let's learn about the impacts that are really gonna happen on our community and the environment, and let's not just do the human nature thing of needing to have the next big shiny thing right now. Let's just take a deep breath and pause and think about this carefully here.
Yeah, partly the question being, how did we get here? Business will react based on what we were talking about this the other day, what they're incentivized to do. And now in Wisconsin, they've been incentivized to build data centers, right? Yep. We have a couple of years ago, they passed the sales and use tax exemption, so that anything they put into a data center when they build it and when they own it is basically tax exempt for sales tax and use. So what you're getting is they've already $70 million in the first 2 years of those exemptions that have gone out. So what we've done is we've taken money that was supposed to go into the state's pockets and into the community's pockets, and we're just giving it back to the data centers, and we're enabling them to scale up. Because why not scale up? We get this big break. So, and then the other problem that I'll let Prescott explain this part. The other incentive that started about 13 years ago.
Yeah, let's give you a piece of homework to do. Back to the how did we get here. I want you to look up the hype cycle, HYPE cycle. You don't have to do it now. Go home and do it. It helps explain what the technology industry is doing right now. Every time some new technology comes along, we get crazy with exuberance and think the world is going to change. And it will eventually change, but it helps explain what is going on. But now let me get to incentive. I call this the perfect storm of incentives. Not an intentional set of incentives, maybe one at a time they were, but they're adding up to this crazy gold rush of data center building. And the first one is, unbeknownst to most people, the only way that your city or village or town can raise the amount of taxes that they collect from everyone as a whole is by having new construction. Because the legislature back in 2013 said, if you're not building anything new, then why do you need more taxes? It's a good proxy for that you need more tax revenue in order to provide services. If you're just staying flat, then you're going to stay flat on revenue. Sorry, that's the rule. So that creates an incentive for communities to chase construction. So you have right now the seed germinating of somebody's calling and saying, I could give you a heck of a lot of construction, like maybe 3 million square feet, wouldn't that be awesome? And they start drooling for the revenue. So then add to that the incentive of the sales and use tax exemptions that Blaine just added, and that incentivizes all of the developers to show up in Wisconsin and start looking for places that are close to power lines, because that's the number one attribute that they're looking for. If they've told you they love you, they don't really love you, they love your power lines. But that's the most salient feature of what they need. They need a lot of power. And then on top of that, there's another tool that everybody said they wanted to learn more about, which is TIDS, and I won't do that yet. But it's a tool that allows communities to essentially pay for the development. And so you have an incentive to chase development, you have an incentive for the developers to be here because of the sales and use tax exemptions, and now you also have a tool that allows those two parties to get together and say, I'm going to really make it worth your while. And next thing you know, you have a data center campus in your backyard.
I think something interesting to add is the new construction caps out. And it's based on the percentage of growth. And so if you have something that comes in one year and it's worth so much that you don't get the full, you cap out, so you don't get anything past that, then everything after, say it's a $400 million top figure, and a mom and pop comes in and they're worth $4 million, that's a 1% growth. But if a $1.6 billion developer comes in, plus that $400 million, now we're at $2 billion, mom and pop comes in at $4 million, and now you're talking about 0.3%. So you missed out on it on the developer side, and then it dilutes everything after it. Is there something you want to say?
About this? I guess I'll just say, just the term that Prescott is referring to is called net new construction, if you're curious. That's one of the things I've learned in being a fly on the wall, listening to him talk about this stuff.
I just wanted to add that we're talking about the incentives. Madison, they're talking about things like putting basically little Band-Aids. I mean, and they can be helpful, but they're dealing with symptoms, right? The problem is the incentive structure. The problem is, until they change that, they're going to keep building. Until there's no sales use tax exemption, they're going to keep building in Wisconsin, right? And until communities can start getting money for their revenue on something other than net new construction, communities are going to start building, are going to build as fast as they can, as much as they can.
And I'm just going to do a quick spoiler alert here. And I'm just going to say that, I don't know. I really want to, but then I don't. Blaine's got his script over here and I don't want to go off script, but, oh yeah, no, it's okay. Well, yeah.
Get to that.
Yeah. Oh wait, there's more.
I'd say one thing too is when you're looking at the state legislation that's coming out right now, it seems that they're all on our side now. Nobody wants a data center anymore. It's amazing. Lockstep, everyone during this election cycle, nobody wants a data center anymore.
So we vote for them,
Yeah.
and then they change their minds.
So when I actually looked at what did they put in place, it's mainly protections for the state. not the cities. They want to protect themselves. They work for themselves generally. Now it's good to have a healthy, strong Wisconsin, but generally they're kind of looking after themselves from what I've seen from the bill so far. But just looking at kind of the risk, we kind of talked a little bit about this already, just the impact of construction. I think that is a huge thing. And if there's any other stories or do you have anything more?
Yeah, we covered that.
Yeah, I thought we did. So then,
I could tell more stories.
I mean, we have some space for it yet, but, so then Prescott, you helped stop the Caledonia, but Mount Pleasant is close by, right? So that's a pretty huge project. So can you talk about the scale a little bit on that?
Yes, so until very recently, it was going to be 2 very large data centers on a piece of property that's about 1 square mile, which is pretty big. They recently announced, this is the Foxconn land, if you remember that little bit of fun. You heard about that over here? Yeah, there's a really nice globe that they built. That's really cool, you should look at it. So Foxconn obviously isn't delivering. I know it's a shock to you. But so Microsoft comes in initially, even before Data Center 1, and says, we will bail you out, Mount Pleasant, from near or certain bankruptcy. And you know, every decision you make is made in the context of what it means to say no. So a Microsoft data center in Mount Pleasant made a heck of a lot of sense to say yes to, because the alternative was hoping that Foxconn was going to deliver, which wasn't going to happen. So I don't even begrudge them for saying yes to Microsoft in those circumstances, because the alternative was worse. But Microsoft then went further and said, we're going to buy the rest of the land from Foxconn, and we're going to build 15 more of them. So imagine living in Mount Pleasant and being anywhere near that facility and knowing that for the rest of your natural life, they're going to be building data centers. So is it, I'm torn on this one. Is it better for Mount Pleasant to say yes to them instead of expecting Foxconn to deliver? They still have a ton of money to pay off in this TID for all of the infrastructure costs. I don't know. I don't pretend to have looked at that close enough to be able to say yes or no. But I just know the context of their decision makes it something they have to answer. This is going to be like 2 or 3 square miles of land that's nothing but data centers. It's a decision that that community has made to go all in and essentially never stop building. In fairness to them, they're going to have semi-permanent construction jobs because it's 15, 20 years long worth of construction. So okay, they'll get plenty of economic development from that, and they'll get eventually a lot of tax revenue from Microsoft. So I'll give them that. But they made a choice to sell their village to data center development. And there's a theme there that I've seen in the research that I've done on all of these other communities across the country. Somebody keeps asking me, many people ask me, what's the right place for a data center? And one answer that I give them is it's got to be in a place whose tax base can absorb it if something goes wrong and they lose the tax revenue. 2, it's a place that decides they want to do a lot of them. And you see it over and over and over again. 2 data centers turns into 5 to 10 to 15 turns into permanent development. Northern Virginia has 549. Mount Pleasant is going to have 17. And when you start down the path, you get intoxicated with the construction jobs and the economic benefit that that creates, and you see it coming to an end, and you say, I want to keep a good thing going. And so in some sense, and this was an argument that we made in Caledonia, the worst case scenario for us as a village is success. The thing goes great, and they want to do another one. And then they're buying more property, and kicking people out of their houses because they make them a good deal they can't refuse. And we turn into some data center village. And we did not want that. We wanted to maintain control over our vision for the village. So I answered way more than you asked me, sorry.
Yeah, and just kind of looking at scale. I know you mentioned you're from Milwaukee, so I want to get like an inverse idea of kind of perspectives. If you're from a big city, let's get the rural kid in here, the person who might have something to say about, you know, the impact on our children and that kind of thing. You have anything to say, Brett, Blaine, about the comparisons about fundamentally defining an alternate?
Yeah, we talked about that a little earlier. But yeah, but think about scale really quick. Do you know that Fiserv Forum took 2.5 years to build? And it's smaller than most data centers, most hyperscale data centers.
The first phase of Port Washington's build, so just the first phase 1 of 2 phases, is 3.5 Fiserv Forums and 1.5 Lambeau Fields, just to put it in perspective.
So I think at this point, we're just going to break for a couple audience questions. I don't know if anybody has anything written down yet. We do have some of the notepads over there.
Or you can feel free to just ask from the audience.
We do have a couple microphones.
I just think you should tell people exactly where in Wisconsin the 3 communities you're talking about are. I know where they are, but not everybody does.
Which communities?
The three communities with active projects are Mount Pleasant, Beaver Dam, and Port Washington.
Okay, where are they?
Regionally.
Where are they?
Yeah.
So Mount Pleasant is just south of Racine on I-94.
It's the last community you pass before you get to Illinois.
No, it's not that. That's Kenosha.
No,
So it's
at the outskirts of Kenosha.
it's north of Kenosha.
Oh, okay.
Yep. Beaver Dam is over there somewhere.
Dunn County.
Beaver Dam is northeast of Madison.
There you go.
45 miles.
And Port Washington is about 30 minutes north of Milwaukee, along 43. And you can drive past it now, and you'll literally drive right next to the data center construction site, and you would be stunned at how far it just goes and goes and goes.
Yes.
How did Caledonia stop it?
How did we stop it? Well, I was charming. That's the only answer. No. So this is an important question, because I'm headed with Sarah and others to Madison on Tuesday for some Senate hearings about some of the bills that are being presented to try to, I guess, level the playing field. And one of the main concerns I have that the legislation proposed does not accommodate is what we ran into headlong in Caledonia, which is you have a year and a half even of city officials talking to developers, economic development corp types, and hearing all the positives. They get the deal ready to approve, maybe planning commission first, then board, and then they put a sign in the grass saying we're going to rezone this property or whatever, and boom, pedal to the metal, and like 4 to 6 weeks later the thing is done. And so what first of all, we got really lucky that somebody noticed the rezoning sign and called and asked what it was about. They did not, by the way, publish on the sign itself, we're going to build a giant data center here that will change the fabric of your village forever. That wasn't there. It was just rezoning, call if you care. So somebody called early on, we got wind of it in late July, early August, and the clock was ticking. We got an organization together, and a lot of it revolved around Facebook. We had a very small core group of people that had the time, the skill, and in some cases the money for various things, like signs and so on. We had people ready to engage fully on this to what we thought at the time was saving our village. We then took a strategy that I thought was very well designed, which was nothing matters in anything we do for the next 6 weeks except convince 7 people, 4 out of 7 people in particular, any of the 4 of the 7, that this is a bad idea. And we focused 100% of our attention on making that case, whether it was in public comment, whether it was reaching out to them one-on-one, putting presentations together and walking them through whichever ones would talk to us. Everything else was a distraction to us. 100% of what we were trying to do was to convince 4 out of 7 people. So who are they? What do they do for a living? What arguments might work? What analogies might resonate better with them, et cetera, how much they know about technology, et cetera. It was that sort of laser focus that made the difference between a lot of people showing up at Village Hall yelling and screaming, and a lot of people showing up at Village Hall yelling and screaming, and being able to convince 4 out of 7 people to say no.
This might be off the topic, but just from someone that I was talking to once, intrigued me with this idea or notion that there actually are empty or half-empty data centers that exist right now. Is there any truth to that?
Well, there are always some. The question is, are there any empty data centers right now? And the answer is there are always some empty data centers. The ones that are empty are probably fairly small. The industry is constantly reinventing itself. And I think the real nugget here, in maybe you're asking this and maybe you're not, is what's the future risk of having a big giant data center in your town, and will it always be occupied and generating tax revenue? And this was one of our primary arguments. No, it won't always be occupied. The industry's changing all the time. A couple of things can happen. One, you could just have data centers be worth less than they are today, which is going to have your developer show up tomorrow and say, I need you to lower my valuation, which is going to lower my taxes. Which, if it's 70% of your tax revenue, is a really painful thing, because all of you residents get to eat that cost. Technology is volatile. You know that from what's in your pocket and on your home desk and so on. Data centers are no different. If your question is there idle capacity that's not being used, then I would say no. That's whatever is not being used today is so small as to be just a rounding error on the capacity. But there's plenty of risk out into the future, and that into the future could be as little as 10, 15 years before we've moved on to the next big thing with data centers.
I have a question. So they're talking about rezoning and implementing things that the data center would have to follow. What do you think? Maybe there are some things we haven't thought about that should be implemented, or the best things that could be implemented that would make the data center take a step back and say, I don't think we can do that.
Well, there's actually several. I mean, and here's the thing we have to keep in mind. You're not allowed, generally speaking, to just straight out prohibit something completely. You have to have generally a reason for it that you can show. Some kind of objective. It's not just we don't like it, right? And that can go back to something in your comprehensive plan. It could go something to your risk capacity, your ability to handle certain risks. Okay. What we're talking about here, ultimately, is thresholds that would. I mean, what we're talking about, I think the point has been made that scale matters, right? Scale matters. There are still 20,000 foot data centers, right? There's still someday UW Stout is going to want an off-site data center that might be 40,000 square feet or something like that, right? That's possible. We're talking about 1 million square feet, 2 million square feet, 3 million square feet. So there are a lot of things that you can add that make it impossible to do that, right? You can. One of my favorites, and I got him excited about it the other day. He was asking, what do you think is one? And I said this, and he thought about it for a minute, and then he just looked giddy. It's just building size, having a maximum building size. If you say our maximum building size is 150,000 square feet, they won't want to build a giant data center there, because they can't, right? If you do something like, you say, you're going to tell us the whole project, and we're going to approve the project, and if you come back later with new land and a new project, then we're going to reevaluate everything again. right? It's not gonna be this separate thing. We're not gonna evaluate it as a separate thing. We're gonna evaluate the whole thing. And that's a thing a lot of communities are doing, is saying, you can't sneak in with us and then all of a sudden say, because what happens is they come into a community and say, oh, it's not AI. No, it's not AI. Well, look around. Who's building cloud data centers now? They aren't doing it. There's no point in it, right? So they come in, and the fact of the matter is, what would probably happen here is if they came, we were already hearing about, even after the deal got done, the sale, that there were still rumors of someone going around talking to their neighbors saying, hey, they've got more money. You want to sell your land? Because what they do is they get the land, they collect the land, and they just start to creep the project. And that is a part of the plan. Because they know if they came in and said we want to build 15 data centers, everyone would say no. Right? So that's part of it. I mean, there's a lot of them. We're going to move into that very shortly. Okay, but there are a lot of different things that you can do that we can ask the city council to consider putting into place. And in reality, I can think of about 25, 30 different provisions that if you adopted any 12 to 13 of them, is going to keep the big people, oh, they're going to say no thank you.
What is the status of the data center in Menominee right now? Is it go?
There's no status. We have a company who owns land, right? They own land that is zoned I-1. And right now, under Menominee City Code, a data center cannot be built on I-1. So could they still build a data center? Yes, they can. But they would need to apply for rezoning again. And they're gonna have to decide whether they wanna do that, right? They're gonna have to decide whether they wanna do that. They know we're working on something here, and there's gonna be regulations that are gonna exist. There's already one regulation that is slowing them down. Something as simple as a 400-foot setback is really what's doing the work right now, because you've got a 320-acre parcel that effectively becomes buildable for only 189 acres with just that one provision, right? So they have to ask themselves, do we want to do this? And the reality is, someone touched on it earlier, they come in and they tell you they like you. What a great place it'll be for our employees. Well, the 600 data centers in Virginia average 17 full-time employees each. That is an actual documented number. So that's...
I have to correct you.
Oh,
It's 18.
18, I'm sorry.
I undersold it. I undersold it. Hey, in reality, that's another 600 people who are employed. Really, so. When they come into the community, they really are. Quinn, who is going to be here, has become really good at feeling out where it's happening and figuring it out where it could be happening. And one of the number one things, we were talking about this the other day, how can we do triage? How can, when we want to try to help a new community, how do we know who needs help and who can wait, right? And one way we know that you need help is if you're on the major transmission lines, that's number one, right? If you're hearing rumors of a power plant being built nearby you, that's a new power plant of some sort, that's pretty likely, right? That kind of thing, that's a big one.
Just a word about this thing I got giddy about, because I really think it has legs. I find the financial concentration risk to be probably the single biggest reason for a small community to want nothing to do with this. The upper Midwest and certainly many towns in Wisconsin have seen this problem up and down, but it never ends well when you have one large taxpayer in one industry in town. That eventually comes to a crash. Setting a cap on the building size in order to prevent you from becoming a one-company town, that seems to me to be a legally defensible argument why you would put a cap on the building size, so that the building itself can't produce so much revenue it dwarfs everything else in the town. And to me, I'd love to talk to a lawyer about it and find out whether it actually could persist, but to me that solves the problem of concentration risk. And if somebody wants to build a small data center, go to town, but they're not building that many small data centers now. They're building them at sort of a minimum of 300,000 to 400,000 square feet, and then lots of them.
I was just gonna drop the truth bomb spoiler alert. Remember how Blaine said earlier about how the developers get tax breaks? They're tax exempt, while the residents pay more taxes.
Yep, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing. Yes, go ahead.
I have a different kind of question. I understand the taxes and the growth of this, but I live 4 miles from this projected data center. We had 2 sprinklers on for one day and our well went dry. We had to get our well redone, so I understand the money and the admin, but I think our community's a lot more about our property value is what projected water source are they using, and I happen to know quite a lot about water and how it works, and what type of studies are they doing to say we're a shallow aquifer, we're about 310 feet deep, but realistically they start, well, we got all these lakes, well, you all know how fast those lakes can be drained. Just kind of, I know that's a little bit different, but I think your property only has value if you have water.
Yeah, it's true.
So when you don't have water, you lose your value. So can we elaborate a little bit on that from local knowledge?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Mount Simon aquifer is the aquifer part of it. It's a really large, widespread aquifer, but right, it's not that deep in certain spots. And the problem is, once you pull a lot out of an aquifer, it takes years, decades for that stuff to seep back in, right? It doesn't just come back. And the other problem you have is just they have a bigger straw, right? So, but in reality, I know that from the standpoint here, though, I mean, as far as I understand, and it's people who work for the city who are here could probably verify if this is true, that if you're going to be on city property, you're going to be getting city water and city sewer. And if you have city water and city sewer, even if there's a well on the property, you're not going to be able to use it. It's going to be capped off. It's not going to be permitted to be used. So they would be getting the water from the city of Menominee.
Well, the city of and I understand that it's coming from the city,
Yeah.
but water doesn't have.
It's not part of the same aquifer, right? It's not part of the same aquifer.
I'm Menominee Water, you are Colfax.
Right.
The aquifers itself, when the city starts demanding more, they're going to be putting pressure on my
Absolutely.
brand new home, on my lower aquifer house. I'm telling you, we put on a sprinkler one day, 2 of them, it dried up.
Just trying to, yeah. And here's the other thing to keep in mind. Just like we talked about earlier, with the money they tell you you're going to get, they came into Beaver Dam saying we're going to use 75,000 gallons of water. This is not true. And here's what you need to know: the people who come and give you that pitch aren't the people. Again, they're not the people whose data center it is. They're the people the data center people hire to get you to the 5-yard line before the public knows and runs out the field and tries to stop it. Okay?
So isn't that another something we can add to the zoning?
We should start moving into that, I think.
Limits on water,
Yep.
and they pay for their own.
And
And
then
if my
also-
water pressure goes down, their water gets shut off. And electric, I don't want to pay for their electric either. They can pay their own electric bill. We don't want incentives going to people that don't have our best interest
Yeah.
at heart, and they do not.
All right, let's do this. We're gonna Joanne, I'll take your question quick.
Okay, so I want to make one comment to the building size. I just had to take a class for my contractor's license, and the main thing of most of it was about building separation. So they are building, basically they look like townhouses or duplexes next to each other, but they're separate buildings because they're separated by, you only have to be able to put a string down between them, and they have to be insulated separate and have firewalls, and they're considered separate buildings. They can be sold to separate people on the same property, and that was not just for residential, that was for commercial also. So that would be something to look into, that wouldn't be something they could do. Say, well, we put 1 inch between the buildings and they're separate buildings. And they were even allowed to go over it with shingles or sheet metal. They just could not have any lumber attached to each other. And
All
they're
right.
allowed to use the same footing.
That's helpful. There's a lot of creative stuff happening. I'm gonna say, hang on one second, because what I want to do is we're gonna move into this, and the first part of this next part is gonna be an extended public comment period, okay, of people just saying what they want to say, and if you have a question during that time, then you can ask one of us, right? if that helps you. And the purpose of this is what we're going to be moving into is trying to together, okay, and I want you to believe with me, because I believe we can do this. We're going to find 10 to 12 of these provisions that we can all say, yes, we want that, okay? And now here's the thing, are there going to be provisions that I want that you don't? Yes. Are there ones you want that I don't? Yes. But can we find 10 to 12 that we all want? That's what we're doing here today. And then I'm going to tell you, I'll be your cheerleader. You go and you tell the city everything else you want, right? And I'll tell them everything I want. Most of mine are really nerdy, and most people don't know about them because they're just super nerdy. But does everyone understand what we're talking about, right? And I think that's exciting because we can all think differently, but we all agree we don't want hyperscale data centers. So what can we do to protect ourselves and to protect our greater neighborhood, like I said? Because the people in Wheaton Township, Chippewa County care about a data center here just as much as you do. They really do. When we found out about the Greenleaf thing happening, we found out from somewhere in the pier. That's how I found out.
Then what are you gonna do with these public works?
We're gonna talk about that. But right now, let's take 5 minutes to let people stretch, get something to drink, do whatever they need to do. We'll reconvene, we'll get rolling on that. It's gonna be a very momentum kind of a thing. And we're gonna have an extended time where people can get on the microphone and give their comments, talk about the things that they want. I will share some of the things that people sent in to me, okay? And then we'll start making a list of what's possible. And it's really easy. We find one and we find out there's 10 people who don't want it, we move on to the next one, right? All right, see you in 5 minutes.
This article, I'll give it to you, everybody hold it on. Read it and you'll be able to put that because of exactly what we're doing. stop seeing
I got it.
get there, get what?
All right, I'm going to explain how we're going to do this. All right. And this is a first. Like, I've never done this with a group like this before. Okay? You've never done this with a group like this before. So we're going to learn as we go. Okay, I have an idea in my mind how it's going to go. I'm smart enough to know things don't always go perfectly the first time you try them. I understand that. But we don't really care about perfect, right? We care about just getting something done, all right? And so in my mindset as I was looking at this, I thought, well, how could we do this in an interesting way, in a unique way? And that to me is to come together and make a decision. Like just the fact of getting people in a room together and finding something that a bunch of them agree on is a good thing. Not everyone's gonna participate in the same way because we have, well, number one, we have council members here who are probably just wanting to observe and listen, right? And aren't going to want to get engaged in this subject, but they want to hear what you have to say. So we're going to start out here. We're going to start building our idea of what we need to protect this community. Someone asked about a synopsis about where things stand. I will tell you how I understand it, okay? What I understand, like I said before, they own land, it's I-1. It needs to be I-4 before they can build a data center. They will have to get city council approval. The city council may approve and may not. I don't know that. We don't even know when that would happen or who will be on the city council. So there's nothing we can do to speculate about that, right? But if they do ask to rezone, it will be because they're okay or are willing to abide by whatever restrictions we put in place. Because those restrictions will be in place before they would have a rezoning hearing. Does that make sense? That's how I understand it. And people say, well, what happens? What will they do? What will we do? I don't know. Like if the city council approves it, that's one thing. If they wouldn't approve a rezone, then that would be up to balloonists. And I don't want to get into a whole bunch of balloonist conversation here. That's definitely not the purpose. But they'll do whatever they decide to do, right? They could do something as simple as sit on the land and wait to see what happens. Wait to see if things change, right? They could try to start selling the land right now, or they could try to develop something different. They have all kinds of options. People think, will they sue? I don't think we need to think about that. That's not anything we can control, right? And that's so far down the road, it's nothing to think about. Any big company can threaten to sue at any time. That doesn't necessarily mean anything. So what I would say is I don't think we need to be fearful right now about any of this. I think we just need to just come together and take action to create or to tell the city council what kind of ordinance we'd like to see. Well, the plan commission would have to advance, it's all part of this process. City council is the ones who approve it though. All right, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna start building this. We're gonna identify a core set of provisions that we can use to complete a resolution. We're gonna actually have a resolution, have something drafted that has the whereases and all that fun stuff. And we're gonna give you the opportunity, not as a petition, but like a petition, to sign on to that resolution if it's something you believe in, and we'll take the time to do that. And then that's something that we'll submit to the city for their consideration, okay? I'm not one here sitting here thinking everyone decides it needs to be live in city Menominee. I don't believe that. I think you should tell where you live. But I think it's important when you're talking about data centers. This is not a mail everyone who lives within 200 yards kind of situation, right? So you're going to do the work of a deliberative body, and we're just finding common ground. We're not drafting an ordinance. We're just coming to 10 or 12 things we agree on. Supporting this resolution does not limit additional ideas from being presented. The city has come up with a way for you to submit those separately. And you'll still have an opportunity. There's going to be hearings when the time comes for you to do that as well, okay? Right now, what we're trying to do is we're coming to something where we say we're all willing to stand by this together today, okay? Any questions at all at this point before I take it further? All right. We're going to have open mic sharing time. I'm not going to keep a hard time limit on this. I would just say what needs to be said as clearly as you can articulate it. Keep others in mind so we can hear from as many who want to speak. I've encouraged those who have already sent me messages that if they want to still articulate theirs out loud themselves, they should do that. All right? We're going to attempt to construct some minutes from the recording. I've been told that they do have the ability to generate a transcript that might not be perfect, but it should be enough that there's an official record of this, which would be helpful not just for us, but for city officials too. To then have access to that, it's going to be helpful as well. Brooke, where are you? Brooke is in the back. She's got one handheld mic. I've got one here, or there's one here at the lectern if you want to use the lectern that you can turn on. And just feel free to come and speak.
Hi, my name is Jessica. My family and I live off of 690th, which, if you're not aware, that is the street right next to where this is getting built. I know there are a couple other families here that also live on that road. Here's something you guys may not know. We are not a part of the city of Menominee. We have no vote on the city council. We are relying on the community of Menominee to protect us in this situation. We have written city council members, and some of them have written us back. And so one of the things, I have all the concerns I think that everybody else hears when we talk about water, power, construction, all of that, the amount of jobs it's going to be bringing in. But my fear is also more personal. So let's say I live there. I'm going to see this outside my window every single day. So if they build for 10 years, I won't be able to open my windows for 10 years. So what happens if my husband changes jobs and we have to move out of state? What happens if my kids who grow up move away and I want to move and be with them? What happens if I am stuck in a house because my house depreciated due to that data center and I can no longer sell it and I am stuck living there forever or foreclosing? I think this is the biggest concern because for us on that street, the city and the data center can promise everything they want. And you guys can come back and say, oh no, this is going to be perfect. None of this is going to happen. But the point is I have nobody looking after me and I could get stuck. I'm hoping that there is a way that we can include in this that maybe within certain houses or within certain distance, that the data center would be willing to match current market value of those homes. So that if in 3 years I choose to sell and it's 150 grand less than what I owe on it, that somebody who was like, oh yeah, I don't mind living there for that, but then the data center can match it so I can pay off my loan so I'm actually able to sell. I don't know how to put that into words, like in an ordinance thing, but I feel like that's important.
I've got a phrase for that you can say actually. Home value protection, just put that. This is happening in some communities. There's a thing called a community benefit agreement that people can negotiate. It can't be forced on anyone, and it has to be negotiated. But it's something that it can be conditioned on zoning, right? You can, when you're making an administrative decision like a zoning decision or a conditional use permit decision, any kind of those decisions, you can make that part of the condition. That's something that's legal here in Wisconsin. But that's one example, because anything with a community benefit agreement has to be tied to specific actual impacts. right? It can't just be, we want something for our schools, we want something for our library. It has to be tied to impacts, and that would be an example of something, right? I missed something earlier that I wanted to make sure to say. Please do state your name and full name, please. Can you say your last name for us?
My name is Jessica White.
Okay, great. So share your name and address. If an email, if you're willing to share it, we're gonna. And she did a good job of this. I want you to name your fear or your concern, right? Because I want you to be able to express that. But then I want you to tie it to a solution that you'd like to suggest. All right. We're trying to help everyone understand. Part of that is helping everyone understand what it is, why it is that you want that, how it affects you. And Jessica did a great job of doing that without even being asked. Yes, Sarah.
Okay. I just want to say that one thing that the people in Beaver Dam have been asking about, and now Port Washington, is support for water testing. So that's something that we should put on the
Water testing.
Yeah.
So you're talking about like for PFAS and things like that?
Well, no, just kind of like related to what this woman was talking about earlier.
Just hydrological stuff?
Yeah, just pollutants, anything like that as a product of the construction.
Okay.
And what it's doing to their well.
Okay, so monitoring of the area aquifer.
Well, sure, but the big thing is making sure that the people who live on these properties who are having their wells contaminated, they shouldn't have to pay for that, for one. They shouldn't have to pay for testing of the water if they didn't ask, because that's a very valid point, and that's something that the people in Beaver Dam are experiencing as well, because the people who live nearest the construction are in the town of Trenton, so technically they're not in Beaver Dam, so they don't have a vote or a say in any of this either. They're just stuck with this now. And so yeah, I think it's really important to make sure that the people who are, experiencing problems with their water, that they have support to not only get it tested, but then in the case of, there's like in East Palestine, for example, when they couldn't drink their water, what are people gonna do if their wells are poisoned? And now what do they gotta get bottled water shipped in, and what do they gotta pay for that themselves? And so those need to be some strong considerations.
Kelly did that for about 15 years because Prescott contaminated we called it the La Brea tar pits down there because they dumped all their chemicals in the ground.
Right.
And 15 years before they brought out truckloads of sludge out of there for water to test against somebody.
Like I think you had mentioned in one of our talks, like having
Third-party testing.
Third-party testing,
Yeah.
but also like
That's what you
any
can
of
put
their
in
wastewater, they collect and
Oh
take
yeah,
off
that's.
site.
But you could put
That's-
for that one, put third-party testing and escrow. That's a common thing that's happening now, is especially smaller communities requiring an escrow deposit to pay for third-party independent testing. Things that they don't have necessarily administrative capacity to deal with in a small village or township. And then you talked about that, yeah, wastewater, like a common thing, and this is one that definitely scares the big boys away, is just no allowance of any kind of wastewater runoff of all, that they have to store it and have it hauled away. That's something that a lot of communities are doing. All right, who would like to speak next?
Hi, my name is Barb Nickel. I live over in that same area as that woman that just spoke. And
Hold it right up. You can hold it right up to your mouth. Yep.
okay, so my name is Barb Nickel, and I live near that woman over there. I guess my question is this first, and I'll just keep moving right along so you can answer at the same time after I'm done. But does the zoning, this I-4, also affect Dunn County, or is it simply whatever land the city annexes?
It's a city of Menominee zone.
Okay.
And right now there is no land in it. So that's why there's no danger of a data center being built now, because there is no land owned in an I-4 zone. Yeah.
So with that being said, then I'm wondering what would be our protections when we live outside the city that they aren't going to end. I heard stories of that on the other side of Henderson, down B, all of that land is next in line to be looked at for a data center. And that scares me because we did not know, nor did our town chair, Bob Cook, know anything about that rezone taking place and that land being swooped up. What is protecting us in the future from something like that happening again?
Yeah. That is definitely an issue, and there are options for that. That's something I can go into a little bit when we get to the community protection part after this, because it's not something that we would do in the Menominee zoning ordinance. But there are steps that communities are taking to help avoid that, and there are steps that cities can take and townships can take to help with those kinds of things as well from happening. And part of it is too, just now I think people are more awake in this town about what an annexation means and what needs to come around it to either approve it or stop it. So
I kind of had a follow-up question I'll try to talk about, but that wasn't city land.
Right.
And it became city land without the township knowing or any of the people that lived there.
Yeah.
So what in a city thing can prevent that from happening under the rug in the future?
The city would have to pass an ordinance that makes that a transparent process from the start. So then that's something that a city has to decide to do or not do. Yeah, the township really doesn't have control over that. Cities have a right when it comes to contiguous property. There's a couple specific requirements that have to be in place for it to be annexable, but not something that the township has control over.
Yeah, I just want to support too, that's the similar situation in the town of Trenton, that when they try and reach out to the common council people in Beaver Dam, they're told, well, you don't live in the city, so we don't have to talk to you. Like, they're getting no support whatsoever. So I think that would be another thing to add, is to make sure that people who are not within the city limits of the data center, but are being the most impacted by its construction, that there's support and protections for them as well.
Yeah, like that gentleman who I was talking about who was getting the rattling at Port Washington, doesn't live in Port Washington. He lives in the township that the land was annexed from. Yeah.
Well,
Chris?
let's expand it to something that's a little bit more formal and request a supporting ordinance that says 30, 60, 90, 120 days out, you have to be notifying the adjacent townships or villages or whatever.
120 days out from when? Okay, well, when an annexation request is wrong, and I'm gonna look over at our administrator to make sure I'm not wrong about this. It's 120 days that you have to act, is that correct? Yeah. So you have to take action, huh?
I'm talking about notification of the neighboring township.
So 120 days before a hearing, you're saying, before? Well, and that's what I'm saying is...
120 days before an annexation is going to take place and what its purpose is.
Right. Yeah. What I'm trying to say is that you probably have to do it 90, because once we find out an annexation is taking place, once that application is filed, the city only has 120 days to act on it.
Well, it's better than Tuesday morning for Tuesday night.
It absolutely is. It absolutely is. But so just they're requesting some kind of provision that the city of Menominee take to promise a little more notice of those people of an annex, or just not them, but everyone, of an annexation taking place.
I think you can take that one step further. Macaroni on 570th Street.
Who's got the microphone? Oh, sorry. Please tell us your name, sir, and...
Matt Cromrie, 570th Street, north of Cedar Falls. I'd like to see that taken one step further, not just notifying the adjacent communities, but demand complete transparency, because, and I know we don't want to look back on the tracks, but you're also talking about protecting other local communities in northwestern Wisconsin and around here. But I'd like to see something move forward where we're demanding transparency, where we're not finding out about this after it's already happened.
Yeah.
You know, so.
Yeah, and that's a very that's a very real understanding, transparency ordinances are becoming a thing too. Like the community asking for an ordinance that just strengthens some of the requirements, maybe extra hearings or more notice, those kinds of things. That's definitely something. That's not going to be something that goes into this document, right? Because that's something that we can do as citizens, right? We can start moving that, but it has nothing. It's not something that would go in this ordinance. Yes.
I'm Chris Pulowski. I live on 540th Street.
Here, someone take this other one.
I just want the comment you just made about that transparency, but if we do not live in the city of Menominee, how can we have power over the city of Menominee to make them do that?
Well, we can't make them do it, right? You have the same power that anybody has of just exerting the influence you have.
But exerting it where? To our township?
Yeah.
Can we
You can exert it to your township. You are absolutely welcome to contact the city of Menominee people. You're absolutely welcome to contact the mayor of Menominee. You're absolutely welcome to tell them what's important. I think we all understand the interconnectedness of, especially the city with the two townships that neighbor it. And we generally understand that is one community. And there are, and this is true of any place in Wisconsin where there's these barriers of different legal sectors. But do not be afraid. No, I'm just as eager to support citizens of Boyceville if they have something going on that they need support with as I am this. So, and that's something we can do for each other.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm Sierra Aarons. I live on 618th.
It's not on.
I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to do that.
Okay, Isaac will do it.
Sorry. I'm not a tech person.
You're good.
Hello?
Now. Try it again.
Testing. I'm Sierra Aarons. We live on 618th Street. Again, I think it's kind of interesting because the town of Menominee wants this free revenue base, but my biggest fear is my 10-year-old goes to take a shower after a big spill and suddenly has cancer. Because the issue is they can put in all the lines they want all day long, and the second that a contamination happens, anything within a 4 to 5 minute radius, especially the lower aquifers, are going to be immediately contaminated. We can test all day long, but are they going to come in and pay for reverse osmosis of my system now so that me and my family can take a shower, not feeling like I live in Flint, Michigan? So one of my concerns is, and strongly, because I've talked to my husband about moving, is that not only do we put in water testing, because that's great, but what are you going to do prior? Because the question isn't if a spill is going to happen, it's going to be when. I work in the dairy industry as well. We put in liners all the time. We do not, it's there, I don't care what type of liners you put in, you're going to have a manure spill. You have to have something in place to immediately take care of it. So for the sake of Menominee, I would be hoping that not only are you working on your testing of wells for the slow leaching of the chemicals, but what do you do when you have that massive dump and our families are affected?
What kind of spill are you referring to?
Heavy metals, any of the type of the chemicals they're using in the cooling system.
You're talking about the wastewater.
Wastewater or the cooling system. I mean,
well, that's
the same thing for them. Or just in general, they're pollutants. Look what 3M did. And look how long 3M got away with it before the community said, I don't think so, but there was nothing put in to, you have 10, 15, 30 days to fully respond. I guess I'm just saying because my family would be the one that would pay the price. Thank you.
Yeah, that would be a good one to write down there, Dylan, would be, I'm trying to think where I have it, but I have it somewhere. I would say double containment storage tanks for wastewater, where the water is going directly through that tank and it's stored in a tank that is double contained.
I think one thing I considered at a point was that you could perhaps have the developer actually put some money down, which is a payment in lieu of taxes, and essentially have a fund sitting there ready for if something goes wrong, you draw out of it immediately. No lawsuits, you don't have to deal with litigation for years and years and years. Some kind of, before they ever even start, you would have to have a protection plan in place, ready to go, so that if you have an environmentalist, independent person come out and say, yeah, that's bad water, it has to be completely detached from all different parties, independent. So that's just kind of how I structured it when I was thinking about some of those things.
I'm sorry that I have to drop this awful truth bomb on y'all. It's to support what we're talking about here and the urgency of it. So unfortunately, there's no real protection for citizens who have contaminated water or communities who become contaminated. And I know this firsthand by not only East Palestine, but other communities that have had any kind of contamination event. Many of them have not gotten any help from the federal government to help clean up the contamination, to get clean water, to get relocated, anything like that. And I use East Palestine as my primary example because I've actually been there and I experienced firsthand what that actually feels like. And just very quickly, I want to just describe that, you know, we think about water like we need it, we use it, but we don't, unless we're actually faced with it becoming contaminated, we don't actually know how much we really truly need it. We need it for cooking, we need it for making coffee, we need it for showering, we need it for laundry, we need it for watering plants. And so when I was in East Palestine staying in an Airbnb right near ground zero where the derailment happened, all of a sudden now, and I knew that I was staying in an area like that, but now I'm faced with, oh my God, I gotta do my laundry. Oh my God, I have to brush my teeth. I have to shower. And I'm like, now I'm experiencing what that actually really feels like. And I won't say now the emotional turmoil I felt about needing to do my laundry and where to go and all of that, but I will just say that this situation illustrates the need for making sure that from the top down, there are provisions in place that are going to protect people when things like this happen. And right now there are none. So this is a really good opportunity to urge people to reach out to your elected officials and say, what about it? And encourage them to pass some legislation that's going to hold these industries accountable who do contaminate communities and make sure that there are funds available to help relocate people or make sure they have clean water or to take care of them medically whenever they become sick.
And you're referring to state and federal laws right now?
Yeah, correct. I mean, for federal particularly.
Community benefit agreement is also a place where you can have funds, like that could be one of the other things that a community benefit agreement fund can support, is does those kinds of individual situations that have an impact. Next.
Is this on?
You gotta,
Hello?
oh, you gotta get, it just takes a second. You gotta go all the way over.
Hello? Okay.
Oh, that was batteries then.
I was hoping maybe we could see some type about light and noise ordinances, particularly hours, or maybe light brightness and it needs to be turned down, or I would love to see it turned off at night, but at least come down a lot. And then I know we covered the water a lot, but I was going to suggest on that second line it says support for third water testing. Is it possible maybe just to put in well protection, add that on, and because it's not just...
Can someone get her a different microphone because it's so...
I can project. Can you
Okay,
hear me?
yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so on
I'm going to get you on stage.
on the
way we could put in like well protection dash support for third water testing, monitoring, escrow, as well as replacement, whether that is putting us on, like if it is contaminated, can they put us on city water where they're paying to hook us up? Or some type of, like, because I don't know that they're gonna pay for a whole, like, recirculation system, but something. So I don't, like, well protection as a whole, third water testing, and if it ever comes back positive, they need to fix it. And that should be on them, whether that's federal help or not, that needs to be on the company because they're the ones who contaminate our water.
And on the company, not our.
Correct, on the
We're not
company.
gonna pay to fix it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you got the stuff about lights. I don't know if you could hear me about the lights in the center.
Yeah, just lighting rules. We have a new light ordinance. I think that there are probably, I would say from my studies, that there's additional things that should apply directly to data centers beyond what's in our current light ordinance.
What about the noise as well? Because like you're saying, I don't want 5 a.m. bulldozers out.
Yeah, so noise, well that's two different things.
And also up and down.
There's two different things. There's construction noise and there's just the regular noise. Those are two different things.
Blaine, you need to capture those out.
Yep, that's what he's doing.
I'm also taking notes as a backup.
Operation.
I got a mic. I think I'm next, but I'm waiting for a prompt here.
And then lighting restrictions, site lighting restrictions.
Okay, are you ready for me?
Yes.
Okay, so actually that falls exactly where I was at. I live 810th Avenue, Tainter. It's actually Colfax, but town of Tainter, Menominee School, whatever. One of those places. But the same thing, I mean, right in line with that. There are other things than the water and the electricity. The water and the electricity go in, out comes heat, out comes light, out comes noise, out comes who knows what kind of particulate, because they're starting to identify that these are becoming cancer zones in the vicinities of these. So there needs to be some kind of monitoring of all the different types of pollution that are possible from one of these.
So let's put air quality monitoring.
There are monitors called purple air monitors. You can reach out to the DNR about that. That would be a good thing to do. In fact, I'm on camera. Port Washington and Beaver Dam residents, see about getting purple air monitors.
We need that here too.
What other specific what other specific monitoring, environmental monitoring, what other soil monitoring?
Well, sound, light.
Yeah, sound restrictions, we haven't got that. Here's one thing I failed to mention, okay? Like I said, when you put in these restrictions, they have to be, they can't look arbitrary. They can't be arbitrary. From a legal standpoint, that makes it very vulnerable to lawsuit. So, like for example, you can't say, we'll take data centers that are 5,000 square feet and smaller. That's just the data center ban, and they'll slap that away so fast it'll make your head spin. So what I'm saying is you and I, what we're not gonna agree on today is figuring out thresholds for this, and we shouldn't, right? Even the people on the city council and planning commission aren't gonna just make up their mind on that. They're gonna consult people who know what the capacity for the city is or what is rational or reasonable to allow, okay?
I got a question.
You're next. Go ahead.
All right, I'm Pat Andreska. I live in south of Colfax, 4 miles, and probably about 4 miles as the crow flies from where this thing is being built. I'm very concerned about the somebody else brought it up, the lighting. You know, dark skies are important. I like to look up at the stars. You know, I want to see every night constant light from these things.
That's right, dark skies compliance.
Here's another thing. I don't understand why an environmental impact statement can't be part of this process.
I think that it should be before any ground is broken there, their environmental impact statement should be done, and so that we know and what this thing is going to do. We need more information. Exactly what are they proposing, and how is it going to affect the water, the air, the environment, plants, animals, everything. So that's my point.
Thank you. Yep, environmental impact study. I heard that a lot all last fall as well from people.
Hi, I'm Terry Siebold. I live on 690th Avenue, near where Whites live. I would like to see, first of all, in the number 2, to have private and public well protection, rather than just well protection, private well protection. Otherwise, I would like to hope that before any company is about to have a permit, that they are expected to tell everything that there is going to happen as far as size, nothing hiding, no non-disclosure agreements, everything is out front, who's in charge, who's the final owner, what is the timeline, how many stages do they expect, that would be part of the restrictions that has to be done before the permit is given.
I would say it should be done before the hearing, right?
Whatever, before anything happens.
Yeah.
Everyone has.
So how do we capture that as one thing? Complete disclosure of complete disclosure of project details. I mean, they're not going to be able to get into all the exact specifics at that point, but but at least having who it is, what it's for, how big it's going to be, yeah.
I do want to say that NDAs are like a mandatory, or the good word is escaping me. Shoot, somebody help me out here. Essential, normal part of the process. Thank you. Yeah, with projects like this, particularly like financial aspects and they claim trade secrets and stuff like that, which that kind of stuff is like true to a small degree, but there definitely needs to be some kind of defining line here of, okay, what's actually trade secrets, what's actually what do we need to, because common councils, they go into closed session when they talk about finance and stuff so that kind of stuff is understandable and whatever, but yes, there needs to be a definitive line drawn of, okay, what is really actually privileged information, and then what is deliberately keeping things from residents that they have a right to know.
I think that's where we get into trouble is they claim that certain things are privileged or trade secrets that aren't. And there's a definition of trade secrets that clarifies that's available. But the one thing that's important to know is that a city NDA is still a public document. And an NDA itself, really all it does is outline what type of information should not be shared under what circumstances and conditions for how long, that kind of a thing. So you can absolutely ORR NDAs. I personally believe that there should be a rule that if there's an NDA that is not related to private employment information and things of that nature, that just its existence should be made public. Just that this NDA was signed on this date with this entity, boom. And then at least people know there's something, and it's not a big surprise. I know Representative Moses is working on an NDA bill right now. I spoke with him about it on Thursday. We'll see where that goes. My experience is that when you take away one way of keeping secrets, they figure out a new way to do it. So. Yes. And I'm not talking about the public, I'm not talking about public officials, I'm talking about the companies. That's when I say that.
All right. My name is Eric Markham. I am from N1205 440th Street, just south of Menominee, or south of Downsville. While I'm not directly going to be that close to the impact here, I've lived here the majority of my life. I work in the city of Menominee. I'm a custodian at one of the schools. I have also worked at some of the It's like the 3M plant. Now, kind of going back to like the giddy notion of like limiting on a size. 3M, what's the designation between the building size versus the plant size? 3M is a little over 700,000 square feet. I think Anderson is about 650,000 square feet. But then potentially a solution is to tie in the amount of people that have to be working there for that size. So like 3M, I think it's a little over 500. Anderson, I think it's around 400. So scaling up the amount of people for the size of the plant or the amount of buildings that are there. So then you're not limited to just 18 people for the 400,000 square feet. Another thing to, I don't know whether to put it under environmental or for the construction, but then the potential impact to the roads from all the heavy machinery that are going to be coming in and out.
Yeah, there's put this road service bonds or road bonds. That's a thing that is becoming common with construction, where they're asking for an escrow deposit of a certain amount of money to cover the repairs, and then if it gets used up, then they have to replenish it for the repairs from the construction. Going back to what Eric said about jobs, I would call that job density, I guess is what I would call it. If there's some way to capture that, I don't know if that's a thing. I think it should be a city planning thing. I don't know if it's a thing that you can legally do or not, but I know that it's definitely a concept that city planners should keep in mind for economic development. I don't think 18 jobs per 320 acres is ideal.
And potentially also not just building size, but for
Yes, and that was one of the things too that I didn't talk about earlier. What I would say is you have a this many feet per building, this many total square feet of buildings on the campus, right? So you could say like it's 75, and then this is an example. Like 75,000 is the biggest building you can have, then you can have a grand total of 250,000 square feet of buildings, or 200,000 square feet of building. So it's like, so you'd say building size / campus size for structures. And they don't like to do that. Like they might be like, yeah, we want 250,000 square feet of data center, but they don't want to do it in 3 buildings because it costs them more.
Mary Gerber, I
Yes.
live in North Menominee. Kind of a rabble rouser by nature. I'm just going to throw out a few things. One is I'm concerned about a setback site and the size of the building size and how tall it is.
Building height.
Yeah. And setback.
What is the height on it now, for those of you who know? I think it's 45. The one thing I would say that it doesn't take into consideration necessarily is whatever mechanicals are on the roof as part of the height, and that might be something to consider.
Turbines.
If there's I'm just saying if there's mechanical height that goes beyond is that included in the 45 feet or is it beyond that? And that should probably be defined as something that I've noticed. Go ahead, keep going, Mary.
A closed loop cooling system.
Okay, closed loop requirement.
And
Another way to say that is that open loop or evaporative cooling is prohibited. Is kind of even a better way to say it, I think. But
well, however you want.
yeah.
I'm good. And also, there have been a lot of concerns about when some of these data centers are abandoned, that the community is left to do something about these massively huge, ugly buildings. And I think if the data center is abandoned, that the company should be responsible for cleaning up the site and getting rid of it.
That's another thing that's happening a lot. It's called a decommissioning bond or reclamation bond. So that we can write that on, reclamation bond or decommissioning bond. Yes?
That's probably not a zoning thing though, that's probably more of a developer agreement, wouldn't you think?
Well, although the developer agreement, I mean, what you're trying to do, I think, is accomplish some of these things without having to negotiate them.
Yeah.
I've seen it, but
We don't need to belabor it, but
yeah.
let's find the right place for that. But it's a great idea to have a destruction or decommission bond that they have to buy. It's one of the most creative things I've seen in any of the proposals I've bumped into.
And then and that might be one of those things too that is like with the community benefit agreement, that it's something that you can make as a condition of a zoning change or of a permit.
Did you get setback size in there somewhere?
Oh, setbacks, yes, setbacks, and there's multiple setbacks. Well, and I'll go over, I've got a whole list of those kind of setbacks that we can talk about later. I will make sure, because setbacks are my jam, Mary.
I'm glad.
Unless you guys want to have a gigantic, like, world record size indoor rec area with like mini golf and go-karts and anything you can possibly imagine, you know.
Our own NFL team. I was joking, semi-joking, that Mount Pleasant might be hosting climate refugees at some point in the future in those enormous empty buildings. All right. Someone in the way back. Yes. Does someone have we got someone with a microphone here. I'm sorry.
Might be able to project.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, is parking lot?
Well, we need name.
Okay, Deanna Shane. I live on N7038, 740th Street, over by Hoffman Hills. Is a parking lot considered part of the construction or part of the building size?
It's not part of the building size, but it would be part of the, what do they call that?
Part of the setback?
No. There's a amount of impervious that they have. There's a restriction that they put on the impervious. What percentage of the facility property can be impervious surface?
Okay.
Yeah.
And then what about the access point for traffic? There's going to be, we've already got Amazon coming in out there, you've got Anderson, you've got Hurlburt. Are we taking into consideration any traffic concerns?
Yeah, that's something. Traffic's. I've got some traffic stuff here. It's in a list.
And then also
traffic studies and traffic routes, and that's different. Not just for everyday life. That's also construction is different than that.
Right. And then for construction notification, I know you've got construction noise down, but is it possible that, as this goes forward, that they need to notify, hey, on this day we're going to do this, this major,
Above a certain decibel.
Yep, we're pile driving on this day, so, be prepared.
Do you have any thoughts about Prescott? Do you have any insight on this?
Well, they pretty much do that for like months straight.
It's
so-
not like it's like 3 months.
Yeah, yes, it would just be, okay, we're gonna start doing this now for the next, X number of weeks or whatever. I do wanna support what you're saying, because that's one of the things that I've witnessed in Beaver Dam with the construction sites, is how roads are either closed down, like entirely, or, and that's happened in Port Washington as well. That's one of the ways that residents' lives are completely upended and disrupted, because now how are you gonna get home? Or they'll close down like a whole side of the road, and so now you got stop and go lights, and you're waiting 5 minutes at a red light before you can continue down the road. So those are very valid concerns.
And then one last thing I had was power. Are we all supporting this with raise costs of power, more power lines? From what I understand,
The answer
it's
is
big
yes.
power lines. Well,
Yes.
how's
So-
that going to impact the wildlife?
Yep, so y'all, there's public comment periods going on right now with the PSC about this specifically. So are you guys on Excel up here? Okay, all right. So right now it's just going on with Alliant and We Energies, but pay attention that if there are any public comment period, I would really recommend paying attention to the PSC website and seeing what is active right now, public comment periods, and what applications are in the works. So you'll want to pay attention that if Excel is trying to raise your rates, you're going to want to make us think about that. Oh, well, then if they want to raise them more.
They will.
Yeah.
All they gotta do is ask. They don't say no. Okay, my name is Cindy Weiss. I live on South Plum Tree between the hospital and 3M. I think I'll be able to see the lights of this ugly thing from my front door, because I've seen construction before that way. My deal is the construction noise, limiting hours of construction operation. It should not be 24/7. I can't put
a 3,000 watt bulb on the top of my house and leave it lit 24/7. There's a light ordinance. I can't be noisy out in my backyard past 11 o'clock because we have a noise ordinance in town. They shouldn't be any different.
Construction days and hours.
Yes, construction days and hours should be limited. Not, I mean, that's separate from the operational noise that this thing is gonna, the hum from these things is affecting people's nervous systems. Is there some way to, I mean, it says noise restrictions, but what does that mean?
It means that's decibel levels and things like that, but what you're talking about are vibrations. That's different. You can do vibrational studies.
But the construction days and hours would help. If a business knows they can't have construction 24/7, that costs them more money to build. We're not saying you can't build, we're saying, you know, you're done at 7 o'clock or you're done at 8 o'clock, whatever.
And you just struck on something very important, is that we're not saying you can't build, we're saying if you want to build, you have to follow these rules.
Exactly.
And if you have the right rules, they don't want to build there.
Exactly.
Right.
Well, that's my other thing is noise after.
Yeah, the noise, do you want to speak about that, Prescott? Do you have thoughts about noise after it's built?
Yeah, there's plenty of debate. I couldn't tell you what the accurate answer is because I haven't dug too deep, but the industry thinks that it's solved problems around noise after construction. 10 years ago, there was a legitimate problem with vibrations and decibel levels within, say, a quarter mile or a half a mile of a facility. They claim to have fixed that, like they claim to have fixed water usage with closed loop. I don't know whether there's truth to that or not. But for both construction and for permanent use, vibration and decibel level limits are perfectly reasonable to protect residents, and they should be strict.
And you can have sound attenuating, you could require like sound attenuating coverings and barriers on the power generation equipment and things like that help limit the noise and vibration. So that might be one. So sound attenuation.
Because I know that's my country jam move, because Eau Claire has a 11 o'clock cutoff on noise, and it was in the Eau Claire city limits. So they moved so they can be loud later.
Lynn Hanson, I live on 409th.
Lynn Hanson.
409th Street, town of Menominee. I live in the town of Menominee. I'm just concerned, this was on a vacation. I was walking by a temporary generator that was just in the middle of a little area. It was so noisy. Could you do something about not letting them have temporary generators, you know, the big ones that are bigger than like a semi, back of a semi, like no temporary generators outside?
Well, I mean, the generators are permanent generators when they're those.
Well, but they move them in if they don't have enough power to do whatever, that are outside of the building.
Yeah, you're talking about
the construction generators you're talking about.
Yeah, but I've also seen things on TV where they brought those in because there's enough power that's being brought into after they're already built. They've got the lines of, this wherever it was.
They have the generators so that they can guarantee themselves 24/7 operation of the data center if the power fails.
They're using them, what I saw, they were using them 24/7, all the time to give themselves more power.
Yeah.
So it wasn't part of the original plan.
You could definitely put language in the zoning regulations that prevented regular use of those power generators.
Yeah.
Normally, the regulations will say you're allowed to test your backup generators for whatever, 2 hours at a time, once a month or something.
That's
Yeah.
reasonable, but using them.
Using them regularly, you should definitely.
That's an easy restriction to add to something like this,
Yeah.
of how often they
There's the one.
can use the generators and for how long they can run them.
Right.
Yeah, and I want to just support how good of a point that is for you to bring up because, you know, I sort of alluded to that earlier where they're gonna, in the projections, say the shiny or the more favorable thing to help the project to go through, but once it's actually happening, then that's when the truth really comes out and then it's too late. So, yeah, they could say that they're only gonna use the generators for X amount of hours, but, yeah.
Should get one. You've got one there for you, Lucy. Nothing left.
She's been waiting for a while.
That's okay. Go right ahead.
These are great ideas, but I'm always concerned about is when you put these in, who's going to monitor them? So they could say that everything is going to be cool, but whose responsibility is it to monitor every one of these requirements in this thing? And if it's not one person's requirement, it's nobody's person's requirement. Someone's got to lose sleep over this, whether that's the mayor or the city manager or the whoever, but build in some really high mark quality monitoring rules to make this have some meat on the bones.
So monitoring and enforcement.
Yep, and I'm just gonna say this is another federal legislation issue because I'll just use the example of a little town outside of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where there's a Shell ethane cracker plant that is an absolutely horrendous polluting offender, and I know firsthand because I actually got sick from it the last time that I was there. So, you know, unfortunately, they continue to violate their air emissions limits repeatedly, and there's no recourse for that for them. And if they have to pay a fine or what, I mean, it's like chump change. So you know, this is another issue that we need to be imploring our federal legislators about, that they need to change, because there does need to be more oversight and stricter punishments for polluting offenders.
All right. We're getting a good list here. We're making a lot of progress. Oh yes, we got her still.
I'm Beth Kilby and I live Brody Road, Menominee. I want to address the energy issue.
Can you hold it closer to your mouth?
Gosh. I'd like to address the energy, where they're going to get their energy, because as you know, they're going to consume quite a bit. Is it by chance going to be that big old solar farm they plan on constructing this spring at Springbrook? I'm just curious.
That solar farm would not be able to power a data center.
Well, it will be the largest in the state, about 4,500 acres.
It certainly could be a supporting component of it, and so
Yeah.
that's another thing to look for whenever data centers are being proposed in an area. It's the transmission lines, and then also that's why I said it's good to look at the Public Service Commission website for any applications that are active, because it's often fossil fuel plants, but yes, solar and wind farms as well. Any kind of additional power generation to help feed the data center, that's going to be something that
If it's
is a
not the
part.
solar farm, where are they going to get their energy?
Then they're going to build more gas plants, or they're going to build more whatever they need to build to power it.
Maybe there should be a requirement that it has to be on the facility premises.
Well, that's actually a provision in the Republican-sponsored legislation right now that they're specifically naming renewable energy on site, but
The challenge with renewable energy on site is that for a 300-acre data center, you'd need about 1,500 to 3,000 acres of solar panels, and even that would, and batteries, and it wouldn't probably.
Well, I guess my question is, could we put that in?
Could we put what though? What
We
specifically?
could specify what kind of energy they use and what it is and where it comes from.
So energy source and
payment plan.
well, just energy source covers it all, I guess.
Who's going to pay for it? Yeah, who's going to pay for it?
Who's going to pay for which part?
Besides you?
Yeah, us.
First of all, you'd have to talk to a lawyer whether you could compel them to put their own energy source
Right.
on the property. But if you did, that would be great, because then you would not pay for it. They would have to pay for the whole thing themselves. The renewable thing, the land use requirement to power, say, a 1 gigawatt facility is like a third of the state. So you're not going to power a large portion of a data center of a hyperscale nature with renewable energies. The land use just doesn't work.
I have an idea, and I want to just get your feedback on this idea. I have a list of about 25 provisions that I would like to go through with you, and a lot of them I think you already have. Okay, just so we can get some of these on the list. Okay, these are ones that I've identified as being very deterrent. Okay, especially in combination. We already have maximum building size and campus limits. We already talked about water consumption limits. Oh, I don't know if we put that on there, did we? Maximum water usage, okay.
I don't see maximum.
Okay, so let's do water use limits. Significant, so setbacks for sensitive receptors. That means longer setbacks from residences, schools, and hospitals. So instead of the 400-foot setback from a property line for a building, it would be that it has to be at least 1,000 feet or something like that from any school or hospital or home, something of that nature. I'm just throwing a number out there. We have reclamation bond, we have that out there. We have zero industrial waste wastewater discharge, that was up there. Maximum height limits has been said. Road performance repair bond has been said. Look at that, you guys already have named some of the top 10 on my list. Decommissioning cost estimate study. So so what they're saying there is that a study itself can be a deterrent. You know, that just having to pay for the studies can be a deterrent. So that's saying and you need one. If you're gonna have a reclamation bond or a decommissioning bond, you would need to have a study to determine what is a fair bond amount. Third party independent review, we talked about that. That came up early. Maximum impervious surface coverage. We touched on it, but we didn't add that. That's a good one. It means what percentage of the property can be impervious to water, meaning paved or built. And the understanding that I have is that most of these hyperscales, I mean, they have about 60 to 80% impervious on a lot of them. So any kind of limit here can be a pretty huge deterrent. Prohibition on ratepayer funded grid upgrades. That's a common one now, and what it is, it's tricky in the sense that, again, it's something that comes with a zoning approval. It's not something that you necessarily put in the ordinance. I'm not sure about that. That's something that our friends who make these decisions and need lawyers to do. All infrastructure costs borne by operator. That's something you can do with a zoning approval as well. You can require that. Yes?
Need to back up so you can take some of that.
Prohibition on what?
On ratepayer funded grid upgrades. And then new infrastructure costs borne by operator. And now, I'm gonna get Prescott very excited. 13 is tax increment financing prohibition. Would you like to explain to them why that's important?
I didn't know what it's dead for, but I'm all for it.
Want me to do the 2-hour presentation?
No.
So,
Give us the Reader's Digest version.
well, you'll have to trust me on part of this. I've really done my homework, I promise. If you use tax increment financing in a small town to finance a large data center, as a community, you will never get any value out of the project, except if you are meeting to the tax levy. So the tax base that you're trying to improve by bringing the data center in, if you use tax increment financing to do that, you get stuck between a rock and a hard place, where if you want to raise the levy, only the current residents will pay for 20 years. So you'll raise the your current tax payments for current taxpayers through the roof. In 20 years, they'll fall back down to the floor, but you can't do that to current residents for 20 years. But if you don't take the opportunity when the new construction comes on, you lose the opportunity forever. So you're between this rock and a hard place and you're stuck. And Port Washington and Beaver Dam both admitted that they have this problem and they're banking on legislative change to get them out of it. So it is just it is a bad mix. Stay away from tax increment financing. You have a problem with it anyway because it would be too big as a percentage of your size, but it is the worst of the incendiary mixes in this whole thing.
Yeah, it fools you into thinking you're getting something in place, but in reality it creates that problem. And he talked to him, you talked directly to the Beaver Dam City Administrator, right? And you explained it to him, and he ended up admitting, yeah, I guess you're right.
That's actually exactly what I was going to say. Yeah, he's not fear-mongering. He's not making up stuff. He can show you the math. But yes, he got the city administrator of Beaver Dam to admit that they have to raise taxes, and somebody in Port Washington did that same thing there. So yeah, this is not, we're talking in fact here. We're not speculating.
All right, I'm going to breeze through a few more. Closed loop cooling, we have that up there. Someone had municipal water supply only. In other words, you're banning private wells, making sure it's banned. Permit revocation grounds, well, I guess there's some point that can go into enforcement potentially, depending on what you can do. PFAS, PFOS, PFOA prohibition in wastewater. That sounds like triplets in some kind of Aesop's fable. Grid capacity verification and utility certification. Just requiring them to have it verified with the people who run the grid that they have the capacity to do it without harming the grid. And then written findings required for approval. This is an important thing for your ordinance that I want to encourage you to do, is when you're doing anything like this, I want to encourage the city to have written findings of fact that justify the reasons for your specific restrictions and the thresholds that go with them. It can supercharge just the legal strength of it. So I'm going to stop with that because we already have identified, you've got more than 10 or 12 things up there that will do the trick.
Yeah, we got a couple people that still want to ask a
I would
questions.
be happy to answer your questions.
Yeah, my name's Jeff Shane. I live out by the Huffman Hills out there. Speaking of the power grid, is anyone, two experts or whatever, heard of anything about mini nuclear projects being put in these data centers? Since they can put them in submarines and aircraft carriers, I can't see why they can't put them in a data center.
Helium-3.
Small modular nuclear reactors are very far away from being ready for commercial use. So I wouldn't expect that to be anything that comes up in the next even 15 years.
What we do need to be concerned about, though, is the proliferation of actual real-life new nuclear power plants that are going to be built in the state of Wisconsin. That's a reality.
Out in Pennsylvania where the same thing is happening, I don't know if you heard that they're opening 3 Mile Island again to power the data centers out there. Humans!
All right.
Can I just say my one?
Yeah, for sure.
This is kind of a question, and I wasn't going to speak because I am currently on the city council. Hi, I'm Gretchen Yanko. I'm Ward 4. I live on the east side of town, so I could potentially hear it if it's loud enough, as I can hear the interstate and the trains right near there. My question it popped up today, so no preparation on this, but is there a way to put into the ordinance a prohibition of a shell company requesting zoning? So the company, the end user, the actual, whoever the data center or multinational corporation is, has to be the requester of the zoning in order to know who they are and be able to research their historical everything.
You just won your way into my heart.
There is a, this is what I was talking about with community protections, and
we may not be able to do much with that tonight, unless there are people who want to say and talk about that a little bit, one-on-one or in small groups. It's called Shell Company Circumvention, and that's where, it's basically a challenge that people do. The developers will create separate LLCs to acquire different parcels and then claim that they're all separate projects, so they're not reviewed. So what she's asking is something different, and I know that is something you can do, right? Is you can create a situation where, you, as a city, you say we're not going to approve different names for the same project. Like you can't.
Transparency, yeah.
Right. Or it's going to be considered part of the original project and all considered as one. But I think that is absolutely something you should look into, and I know that I am going to look into, and I'm certain that others in the statewide group that we're a part of will look into that, because that is an excellent idea. Yes.
Do we still not know who really wants this?
They have not announced themselves. NDAs were signed with Beaver Dam by a company called Balloonist Incorporated, Balloonist LLC. An attorney by the name of Douglas Buck represented them in Beaver Dam. Beaver Dam is Meta. That doesn't mean it is, but there's a lot of connection. I mean, there just is. I can't say for sure. We don't know. I'm just saying what the connection that we observed is.
Amazon putting their distribution here, Amazon also builds data centers. And so
Yeah.
it seems
I think this Amazon thing is completely disconnected. I believe it's completely disconnected. Because I don't think if they thought a data center from a different developer was going in next door, they would have probably put their thing there. So, all right. So here's what we need to do. Yes.
Let's get you a microphone. Waters class. Can you hear me? No, we're going to get you a microphone. Okay.
Thank you. My name is Val Waters Clapp, and we live in the town of Tater, and we go all the time to go to 94s. We're very close in many ways. Nobody has mentioned anything about one other contaminant or pollution, and that would be electromagnetic frequencies. Have you done or run into any studies on that from all of the equipment? You have.
I haven't either. I haven't come across any communities that are making that a big thing. I think that probably the reason is because when you're making these, you're looking at what you know the things are that they're not gonna want to comply with, and you're putting those provisions in place, right?
Okay. Well,
I think it's a definite something that people should be concerned about in life in general, but it hasn't been. I haven't heard it raised with data centers.
I haven't. Thanks for bringing that up, because we're gonna add that to our homework. But I will say that in terms of like the high transmission lines, somebody in the Beaver Dam area reported that they were changing a tire and they were getting electrocuted unless they were. I think he said he was wearing rubber-soled boots or something, but. Yeah, the high transmission lines are also an ignored part of these projects and need to be put more to the forefront.
I don't know if I need this, but stray voltage is probably what you're talking about. Is that common with this?
No, I haven't heard anything about it, no.
I believe it's mainly a characteristic of very high voltage where you get kind of the issues, and I don't believe they have enough power to actually be too harmful. There's definitely some studies out there linking different things, but it's pretty inclusive at this point. I have looked into it to length, so.
So you asked me a question earlier, how did Caledonia win? And I want to add one thing to that. Almost exclusively in every town that I've been to, the people on the city council want to believe they're doing the right thing long-term for your city. They have really good intentions with some rare exceptions. Assume the best of them. But I found, and I have found in other communities, the best thing to do is to go after that theme are you doing the right thing long-term, particularly financially? There is a really good case here that in a small community, it's just the basics of, is this the kind of risk that we want to take on? Here are the financial risks, financial concentration, obsolescence risk, empty building risk, lower valuations, like all the things that the city staff and the city council are thinking about all day, every day when they have these proposals. And all these other edge issues are important, bring them up, talk about them, but the vast majority of the conversation for us was focused on these just core issues of, these are the things that the village board in our case should be thinking of for making the right decision about whether this is in the long-term best interest of the village.
And also we found, unfortunately, for the common council members to be grossly uninformed, and that's mostly because they're getting their information from the industry who's trying to convince them that this is a good idea. So making sure that they're getting double-sided information, so not only, hearing from the industry, of course, but then also from people like us who...
With one really important caveat, and that would be the city council members who showed up today.
Hey, that's how you get yourself informed, so thank you, and that's not what I was implying. How dare you?
Yeah, so one thing I've been a voice for a long time, who's taken some heat for saying I really come to the conclusion that I really believe everyone was trying to do what they thought was good for the city. And I think that what you have is a dynamic, and Prescott has talked about this before too, of because of the nature of the way the developer is trying to sneak this through and without the public knowing about it, that when you get to that point, the only information they've gotten is from the people who want to build it. They haven't heard from the public. The public doesn't know. And so you get into a situation where they just don't know. And I've noticed I really have encountered very curious, interested, receptive city council members who I've been able to engage with over the last 6 months. And I really believe, and one of the things that we are trying to tell communities who are just starting is the worst mistake you can make is to not start out from a position of trying to believe the best intentions, regardless of what it looks like. Okay? And engaging respectfully and curiously. And that, I was an angry villager with a torch for a few weeks. And then I realized one day it isn't gonna help anything. This isn't gonna help anything. Now, does that mean I wasn't upset or angry at choices that were made? No. But they were made. Now what? Now should I get up in someone and make them feel threatened and make them wonder if they should come to an event like this? Right? Or should I listen and let them listen? And I think the biggest thing that any community can do from the start is to talk with each other. And one of the number one ways that I'm going to be promoting, because my mission now is to go out to other small communities and prepare them for this. And I'm not talking about preparing them to stop a data center. Every community gets to make up their own mind about that subject. They do. They have that right. But it should be a community discussion from the start. And the way you have that is by starting the conversation now. Right? Having community members and council members and city staff having these conversations about development, about the future, and staying engaged. You've engaged. I'm so happy for that. Stay engaged. And good things can happen doing that, okay? So that's my soapbox.
Can I ask a question about this deadline of tomorrow for the city council or the city getting written input from the community?
There's no deadline tomorrow.
I think it's the 17th.
No, it's starting. It
starts the 17th.
It goes to March 9th.
March 9th, okay.
Yeah. It goes till March 9th. There's you can go on the city website and there's a place you can go to enter your feedback, and there's other alternatives to that if that's not an option for you.
Are we gonna send something to them? Can we send something?
That's what we're working on right now. That's what I want to get to. Is that part right now, okay? All right, so let's go to the top here. And what we're going to do here is we're going to need to go down. What I want you to do here is let's take about 3 minutes, and I want you to talk to some people near you if you're engaging. And I want you to come up with 3 or 4 of these that you think are really important. Okay? And then we're going to look at whether we should add those. Oh. All right, okay, let's try something different.
Thank you for coming. Are you sure to tell me that?
Someone.
Thank you.
I think.
I just got a lot of talking. All right. Someone show one that they think is a top priority. Construction schedule. How many people cannot get on board with a construction schedule? I want you to raise your hand if you can't get on board with a construction schedule. I mean, you can't get on board. Like you're like, no, I wouldn't support that. What I'm saying, I don't want. It's too hard to identify the other way, right? See what I'm saying? So. All right, construction schedule is a possibility. All right, let's start at the top. Let's just go through these. Home valve protection with certain radius. Does that seem like it should be one of our top 12 things?
Yes.
It's not a common thing.
The biggest impact for the.
It's not,
So if they run our water and they raise our electric, I will sell my house for what's worth right now. Or nobody wants to live in Menominee anymore.
okay. Go ahead, Prescott.
It has happened. I would not take it off the list. I don't know that it's a zoning thing. It's maybe a developer agreement thing, but
That's what I mean. Like, I think it's probably a community benefit agreement or something. Home value protection, okay. Private and public well protections.
I'm going to intervene here.
Yes, go ahead.
And say, if you're going to try to get to top 12 with people, you're going to be here a really long time. Yeah, I think you've got to have a different strategy to trying to filter this list. I think, here's what I would suggest.
Yeah.
It's gonna require some engagement offline.
Yes, which is what I wanted to do.
But after this meeting, try to take this list and put it into a zoning versus developer agreement list to try to filter it out that way. And then you're gonna need to make a straw man to bubble yourself, the first 12 to the top.
Yeah.
And then go for feedback from people and say, is there anything that I put under the line here that you would be really mad at?
Right.
If I left off the list.
Well, because I could tell you, like you guys named the 12 things that would be on my list already.
Yeah. I mean, there's nothing on here anybody's going to say, I don't support that. I don't think.
Right.
And the top 12 is going to be subjective. You know an awful lot about it. I would take a crack at the top 12 and
Are you guys comfortable with me taking from this list? Yes, Mr.
I wouldn't even divide it out, I'd send the whole thing in. I mean, everybody here has thought it was.
Well, the reason I said we will send the whole thing in.
Okay.
But what I'm going to do is we're trying to find a thing that everyone can get behind. Sure. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's what I was kind of getting at is, you know, everybody's
You're behind
bringing
all.
up the concerns.
You're behind. Is that true? Okay. Stand up, and say we're behind it if you're absolutely behind it. All right. Yes. You guys give yourselves a hand. That's awesome. All right. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to put together a list of this in. I'm going to put them in order of my understanding of how.
Try to give it a hierarchy
Most protective ones, like the most deterrent to least deterrent. Does that make sense? And do you guys trust me to do that?
Categorize.
Yes, we'll categorize it by group.
Similar.
Well, right, yes, absolutely. Okay, that's what everything I have does. Okay, with that said, we will, I think we're going to be talking about if there's another interest in having a forum that's just not so much like this, but more sharing thoughts and concerns are about what we can do to just better organize as a group of people, then we will do that. Just let me know, and we'll make that available for public officials to come if they want. There are some public officials here who would be happy to talk to you, or candidates who are here. If you're here as a candidate or official and you are happy to say and talk to some people, go ahead and raise your hand and make that known. And we're just going to call it for today. I would love to get back together and talk to people about some of these other protections, but we'll figure that out another time. All right? Thanks for coming. Yes, Chris, I'm sorry. Chris.
What's the timeline for getting this to the council members and?
With the timeline, I mean, I'm going to be meeting with them personally in the near future, and I want to get what I have. Oh, you're gonna turn it off. Okay, so let me show you what I have, quick, so you know. What I did is put it in the form of a resolution to make it look like an official act that we're trying to do and give it some weight. And what I would like to do when we get it done is have people sign on to it. And I would like to then release that to the press so that people in other communities can see what can be done. And so it says, whereas the Common Council of the City of Menominee has established an I-4 data center industrial zone, and whereas the city has sought the input of the public in shaping those zones regulations, whereas the government must reflect the consent and voice of the people it serves, and whereas when a community speaks in unity and one voice of the people amplifies solutions, and whereas Menominee's comprehensive plan cites small town charm and intergovernmental cooperation with neighboring towns of Red Cedar and Menominee. See, that's important to me too, you guys. And whereas hyperscale data center development would permanently and harmfully alter the charm of those relationships, therefore be it resolved that on the 15th day of February 2026, an assembly of steadfast converted citizens of the city of Menominee and its neighboring townships calls upon the Common Council to adopt the provisions herein to fortify the I-4 data center industrial zone. Furthermore, whereas there remain broader concerns regarding transparency and public engagement, be it also resolved the city enact measures through both transparency ordinances and citizen engagement resolutions to ensure the public's voice remains central to all intents and actions of the governing common council, the mayor, and the officers of the city. Is that something you? Okay. All right. I will have something that I can have that list ready within 1 or 2 days. Because I already have most of that list somewhere already. All right, thanks so much for coming. I really appreciate your engagement and your time. If you have any questions, if you need anything you want to talk about or anything, I'm right here.
Good job, Blaine.